AI advancements are developing at a rapid pace, and the opportunity it presents for business and leaders is unprecedented. But how are the C-suite in the Asia Pacific thinking about its use, and what considerations are they working through? I'm Leandro Perez, Vice President and CMO of Salesforce Asia Pacific, and I'm excited to be hosting another Salesforce Executive Conversation, where my guests share their thoughts, perspectives, and experience working with C-suite and other thought leaders across the globe. We've already had so many incredible conversations. If you've missed an episode, you can catch up at sfdc.co/conversations. Today, I'm coming to you from Mumbai with Arundhati Bhattacharya, Chairperson and Chief Executive Officer of Salesforce India. Arundhati oversees the growth strategy of the company and plays an integral role in defining Salesforce's relationship with the ecosystem of customers, partners, and community across India. Throughout 40 plus years in the financial sector, she has also earned a string of accolades to her name, which include the world's 100 most powerful women by Forbes, top 50 globally most powerful women in business, and world's 50 greatest leaders by Fortune. Well, thank you, Arundhati, for joining us. Before we get started, a few quick fire questions. An easy one. What did you aspire to be when you were a kid?
Well, the first thing I remember was me wanting to be a biochemist. Okay. I gave that up pretty quickly though, because I found that organic chemistry was not something that I enjoyed. So I think I changed that pretty soon.
So what about, thinking back, technology that you encountered that you really got excited about at the time?
Okay, and that's pretty basic technology, by the way. So I remember when I had joined the bank, we used to have this very difficult time whenever anybody came in order to take a premature payment on a fixed deposit, because there had to be a penalty payment and there were all kinds of calculations, and we used to find it very tedious. And then we got a machine called a BankCal, which used to do this for us. And we were highly tickled with it. In fact, you know, there was quite a bit of a tussle as to who would get that machine early in the morning. But the fact of the matter is there were a lot of people who were actually feeling quite threatened by it.
Wow.
And 5 days after it arrived, it stopped working. So we called in the people who had supplied it to us, and they said that we'd like to open this in front of you to show you why it isn't working. They opened it and found 2 gems clip that had been put in order to ensure that it didn't work. But it was technology that got us excited at that point of time, yeah.
Wow. And still that's happening today. People always worry about new technology when they don't understand it.
True.
So coming back to today, there's a lot of talk about AI. What trends are you seeing in AI, and what industries in particular you think are leaning in?
So, you know, the BFSI industry is by far, I think, the digitally most mature. So they are leaning in quite a lot. So are industries like auto, consumer goods, because they need to have the profiles of their customers. Industries such as healthcare and life sciences. In fact, you know, there are a large number of industries that are now looking to leaning into AI. I was just talking to somebody from the auto industry, and they were telling us about the various kinds of use cases they could create in order to improve the value of the vehicles that they are sending, by ensuring that they are providing services in time, by ensuring that, you know, they have the right charging station or the, you know, the right infrastructure around the vehicles that they are that they are selling. So there is a lot of value add that people are thinking about while discussing AI. There is another customer that we met today, for instance, and they are one of the largest paint manufacturers. And they are using AI now to extend their services to creating interiors, home interiors, thereby ensuring that they are getting the painters and the plumbers and the people who do the woodwork, all of them into their category, so that their category of sales goes up. And the influencers are basically being brought together by them instead of being allowed to operate on their own and use whatever they want to use. So there are a lot of industries that are looking at AI to give them that intelligence out of the data that they already have in order to value add on their services.
So obviously AI is not new, but what is new is generative AI. So maybe you can explain a little bit about what the difference is between the two and then where you're seeing it coming, especially in our region.
So I think the main difference with generative AI is the use of what is called the large language model. Generative AI has made AI accessible to far many more people than AI ever was. For instance, today you can just write a query in plain ordinary English and have it answered to your satisfaction, because you can now access AI with stuff written in plain language. Not only that, what happens is, because generative AI is able to read and extract knowledge from what it's reading, therefore the number of data points that generative AI is accessing is far more, is in multiples of what AI was accessing, because AI was accessing mainly certain key words or certain structured data. It was not accessing all of it. The large language model, on the other hand, actually understands the language, understands the nuances, and therefore is able to extract many more data points. And therefore, what it is putting out, again, in the same language, in the large language model, is far more informative and far more focused on what you exactly want. So basically what it has done is, it has opened, really widened the area for people to actually access AI and gain from it.
What are some of those use cases you're hearing from our customers of how they're stepping into generative AI?
So we were just talking about generative AI and how people are using it. A lot of people are basically looking at it from the very simple use case of customer service. How do they determine how a customer is reacting? What are the nuances of a customer's complaints? How do they ensure that they can get more people to swarm in on a problem and solve it faster? So the usage mainly at this point of time seems to be in the sales and service side. The other side of it, where generative AI is probably being looked at, is where developers are using it to write code or to predict where the bugs are and to maybe get certain answers as to how those bugs can be fixed. So on the IT side, I think it's more towards generation of code, which is repetitive in nature, which can be eyeballed and corrected a little bit in order to create what the exact application that you are looking for. I think these are the two main areas. But there are people who are looking at, for instance, using generative AI to predict how a machine is going to work, what is the quality of the output that is going to come, what could be the ways that the quality could be improved. So there are very many different use cases that people are looking at. But at this point of time, it's still all very experimental, because one thing is very correct, which is at this point nobody really has the security layer. So they are not very keen about using their own data in order to experiment. They are waiting for people to come with sandboxes that will enable them to start experimenting without allowing their data to be leaked to the outside world. Okay? So to this extent, at this point, it is still very generic, whatever is being tried. And I don't think people are trying stuff with a lot of their own data.
You mentioned here security obviously goes hand in hand with trust. What challenges are you seeing maybe with this new technology, and in particular in our region? What are the customers telling you?
So, I think customers have 2 or 3 basic questions. The first question, of course, is regarding trust. How do we ensure that data privacy is not being breached? How do we ensure that that is properly maintained? The second pricing that they have, and this being a very value conscious region, is pricing. What would be the pricing of such products? Because they all understand that it uses enormous compute power, which obviously would be costly. So is it something that is within their reach, or is it something that's not? And as you know, other than ChatGPT at this point of time, nobody has come with any other pricing model. And we all know ChatGPT is not going to remain at the price that it is at. Currently, they are pricing it low because, well, it's giving them a lot of data on which to train their models further. But at the end of the day, we do not know whether that's the kind of pricing that will stay. And therefore, pricing is a question that people are asking about. The third question that they are also a little worried about is, what about liability? What happens if generative AI gives you an answer which is not right? Generative AI is known to hallucinate. What if the answer is part of an hallucination? Something is recommended but should not actually have been recommended. What happens then? What about liabilities in case the model has been trained on something where there has been a breach of IP? So there are all kinds of queries regarding liabilities. So I think these are the three basic questions that we are facing: trust, pricing, and liabilities.
Given some progress by local governments, what are you seeing that AI will place in the smart governance of, especially in India in particular?
I think, this is a place where it can play a huge role, mainly because of the very large population that India has. Nobody can possibly address the needs of 1.4 billion people without using IT, and IT of a very high order. Because it's impossible to understand what are the requirements of people unless and until you really understand the ecosystem that surrounds them. So whether it be in the area of education, in the area of health, in the area of agriculture, because again, if you look at agriculture, 50% of our people are still on the land. These are areas where IT is required to a huge degree. If you look at agriculture, for instance, you can have hailstorms in little pieces of land where the crop would be entirely destroyed. That doesn't really mean that the crop is destroyed over a very large large area, which means that an insurance claim made by a particular farmer may actually be correct, whereas farmers in and around may not require that claim at all. Now, how do you ensure that this is really the case? And that is the place where I think IT and AI both will have to play a part. Okay? Similarly, if we use AI in respect of health cures or preventive health, I think that's another area which can help us enormously, because that's not something which we have done very well. And again, with a population as large as ours, even if you can ensure that you have the right medicines at the right place, given the kind of things that are happening in places, it would save a lot of lives. Say, for instance, if you again go back to the rural areas, there are areas that are ridden with snakes. Okay? Now, the antivenom runs out quickly over there. However, antivenom may be supplied uniformly across the country. So there are places where those medicines are actually going waste because the expiry date is over and it's not required. Whereas there are other places where they're very much required, but because the distribution is uniform, those places don't have them. So there are many, many applications that we can make with AI, which can make lives far better, standard of livings can go up, health can improve, education outcomes can improve. So there is a lot actually on smart governance that can be done.
So talking about how AI can be used, how do we foster a culture where it becomes something that people really want to use across departments and teams and whole organizations?
So I think, we have to still get to a level of maturity where we begin to realize what are the benefits that AI is giving us. As I told you, if you look at supply chains and if you ensure that you are targeting the right place for the right product, you will actually be saving a lot of money. Once you explain to people that you can target in order to make far better usage of the resources that you have, people will adopt. Because India is by far a resource poor country. It always has been. Merely because, the number of people that live here, and that is an automatic corollary to the fact that resources have to be shared. And if they have to be shared, then they need to be shared in a manner that it goes the last mile, that it's used to the best extent possible, that there is no wastage. And this happened when they started the direct benefit transfer. They could ensure that the money that is being sent to a particular beneficiary, all of the money reaches that particular beneficiary, and part of it is not siphoned off by middlemen. And because that happened, that created so much of goodwill both for the government as well as amongst the citizens, it was well worth implementing it. Similarly, if they realize that AI can give them that intelligence in order to target the resources for the right usage, I'm sure this is something that people will adopt without any difficulty at all.
So listening in, we have C-suite leaders. What advice would you give to them of how they can get started and maybe where they should get started?
Well, with the C-suite leaders, I think the first and foremost thing that I would talk about is to ensure that they have their data in order. And that doesn't mean that they need to create new data lakes or data warehouses. Whatever data they have, the first and foremost thing is to create an awareness that when anybody is inputting data into the system, the data needs to be of good quality. Okay? You can input it in any manner that you like, but the quality needs to be good. And the people who are inputting it need to be very clear about the fact that they are doing something which can determine outcomes that are, that could be serious outcomes. And therefore, they need to have the responsibility to ensure that the input of data is correct. Once you have the database right, thereafter drawing the conclusions therefrom, obtaining from it the knowledge that will ensure that we have the right outcomes, that becomes far easier. But we need to get our data in shape.
Anything we didn't cover, Arundhati, today that you want to share with our audience?
Well, the one thing I think that I do want to say is that I don't think there has been a more interesting time in the recent past than what we are witnessing today. Generative AI is something that has really opened, the world of IT to a lot of people who never ever thought that they would have access to it. The languages of, which is used in IT, starting from the time when we had Fortran and COBOL to Python today, it was all supposed to be in the realm of people who were a little different, who had to have a STEM background. Today, suddenly they find that they can get a lot of things done if they know any language, and it doesn't matter which language, the language that they are speaking in, their mother tongue, they can still get queries answered. That is, I think, a revelation for a lot of people. And it's something that's causing a lot of excitement. But along with the excitement, there is also a frisson of fear, because people don't now know whether this is going to result in, loss of livelihood, loss of their jobs. How will they change? Many people do believe that there won't be loss of jobs. Okay? There never has been in all the other industrial revolutions. In fact, jobs have only increased. Right. But they do know that they will need to change. They do know that they may need to reskill, they may need to upskill. And anything that is not known always can cause some amount of fear. So I think there is a lot of excitement, there is a little bit of fear. So it's one of those perfect storms. And it's something that I think everybody is excited about. So in my view, I think I couldn't be in the IT sector at a better time. So I'm really glad that I changed over from finance into IT. I'm here at a great time.
Here are my takeaways from my conversation with Arundhati today. 1, AI use cases are very prevalent across the region, with customers coming up with unique and very interesting approaches. 2, generative AI opens up this technology to many, many more people. And number 3, to leverage the full power of AI, you want to start by first getting your data in order. Thank you again, Arundhati, for making the time and for sharing your wisdom with our audience.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If you want to catch up on the chats we've had so far with some of the most interesting and valued executives in our ecosystem, visit sfdc.co/conversations. We are covering the ideas and concepts that are top of mind for executives and leaders within business to share, inspire, and help you connect with your customers in a whole new way. So far, we've covered AI to deliver limitless customer experience, generative AI for sales teams, flexibility and productivity for better business outcomes, and so much more. Thank you for tuning in to our Executive Conversations. See you next time.